Welcome to a high-level overview of the Sage Enterprise Management Agri Nut in Shell presentation. What you're looking at the moment is an example of a landing page showing the tables and steps that are required to manage your NIS processes. The first step, stating business partners, relates to business partners that can be set up within the system. These include customers, suppliers, it might be your carriers, sales representatives. The second step is the items, and again there are various types of items that need to be set up based on your requirements. So we have things like raw materials, bulk nuts not cracked, bulk nuts cracked, hulls which are a byproduct, could be packing material, and then you've got the final packaged product. So the first thing we're going to have a look at is one of the products, and I can do that just by clicking on items. And the product that I want to have a look at today is, I'm just going to type it in here, find this product, and so this is going to be a raw nut, and as you can see I've added an image of the nut in here. So in this particular instance we're just saying that no quality has been completed for this particular item. Right, if we have a look across here, there's a few different tabs that sit within the Agri system as opposed to the standard Sage Enterprise Management System, and that's because we need extra information for nuts. So we've got management of the nuts. This is saying that there's mandatory lot tracking with this particular item. You've got units of measure, so whether it's kilos, whether it's smaller weights, larger weights, you've got that information here. Other ones for this, you've got, you might have suppliers set up. You could have multiple suppliers set up for an item because, you know, you would be receiving items from multiple suppliers. And there's also different product characteristics and optional information that you can add into this presentation. Another item that I do want to have a look at is this one here. I don't know whether you can hear that fire engine in the background. So in this particular case, this is going to be pecan. So we're working with pecan nuts, not macadamias, because this is what the system from Aritmos has been set up with. So we're looking at graded nuts in this particular case. If we look at the right-hand side of the screen, and from here we can look at a manufacturing bill of materials, because this has actually been through a manufacturing process to become graded. So what we're doing now is just loading the bill of materials that's attached to this item. And what we see here is that the component that we're working with is just cracked bulk pecan nuts. And in order to grade it, we then have a route attached to it. And the route in this particular instance is, we have a look in here, and this is the particular route, the information that's relevant to it. If we have a look at the work centre itself, so what I'm going to do is just do a quick jump to the work centre. And what we see here is the work centre is actually a stage 3 grading machine. So based on the component and the work centre and the costs associated with that work centre, we're able to get a cost for the particular item, which is then used once you're in that process of sales, you know, versus your costs. Right. From here, we can have a look at, if we just close this off, we can now have a look at any work orders that may already exist for this particular work centre. So these are different, and in your particular instance, it could be just your different grades of macadamia nuts that you've got. So these, for example, are the different work orders that are in here. And if we have a look at the one on line 7, what I can do is we can look at this particular work order. And what we have, this screen here is one that you would not have anywhere near this number of transaction entry screens. This is because this particular product can cover off a whole lot of different industries, and this is just the demonstration data set that's set up to be working with. But what I can do here is look at this particular entry screen here, which will be this one here. And what you're able to see then is, in this particular instance, these are completed products that are attached to that work centre. And if we look at the components, these are the components that came in. So basically we're saying that by the time we finish this grading process and we've done our production entry, these are the, just go back into the header, these are the finished items, and these here are the quantities that have been released from that 1,000 kilos that came in based on the different sizes that we're looking at. I think one of the things to remember too when we're looking at this is that this is what's set up in the demonstration system. You know, there's the system is configured to suit your own processes rather than, you know, rather than me saying that this is how it will be done. That's not the case at all. This is just how this particular demonstration set is set up. If we pop back into the completed products, I'll just close this page. Oops, I think I wanted to be where I just was. I'm just going to pop back in there. Okay, we go back into that particular item. This one up here. Okay, what I wanted to show here was just to draw back on this particular item. If we go to the stock site, this is showing me what we currently have in stock of that item. But not only that, if I drill down on this little action box and have a look at detailed stock, what I'm now able to see is which of the sites we've got the item, but this is the actual lot number that has been associated to this particular finished product once it's had its grading done. So it's possible to, through all the processes, create your own batch numbers or lot numbers that are attached to items, or you can manually enter them, but there's certainly rules that you can put around creating your own. So what we're going to do now is have a look at the grading or quality process. I'll just close this one off. And this isn't so much the process itself that we're going to see. This is actually going to be all the rules that you set up around the actual process. So I'm just going to close right out of here. We drilled down a fair bit there. And so the grading or quality process has three main purposes. So it's recording the quality results with checking against min-max values if required. It's adjusting the weight or mass where certain quality characteristics like moisture and foreign material exceeds threshold values. It's also calculating penalties and bonus based on actual quality results. And that might be drying cost or adding extra costs. It might be like a drying cost or a cleaning cost, handling costs, those sorts of costs. So a table of ratings is created that works in the background, helping with all the calculations. So I'm going to show you a table very briefly, which has been set up again for pecan processing. But it's important to recognise that this table is configurable and it's set up to your rules, not to the rules that you're having a look here. So we're going to have a look at quality. Okay, and what we're going to do here is have a look at nuts. Okay, and this is just a table of information that allows you to put rules in place, like I said, for they're actually, you know, for calculating penalties and bonuses and that sort of thing. It's quite a interesting table to try to explain, but it is one that once it's set up, it sits in the background, and you just every now and again when formulas need to change, they're changed. And you will see how this comes into play as we get further into the actual presentation. One of the things on the stock item though is that there were 3 groups, group 1, 2 and 3 here, which are all used, they're used for reporting purposes, but they're also really important because they're the groups that this information relates to. So, you know, if it's group 81, these types of yield tests and different grading tests will be relevant. You know, and then you've got a different set of group 2 and group 3 that are all used. We then have what's called value tables, and the value tables are used to do mass adjustments and cost calculations. So I'm just going to find our value tables. Let's see if okay, and nut value tables. Okay, and the nuts. All right, so let's just have a look at these particular tables here. So for instance, if we, on this left-hand side, we've got the various tables that have been set up for these. So one is to help calculate levies. It might be that you've got to do a mass update of moisture content. It might even be for yield. So we'll start off by having a look at a moisture mass adjustment, which is this second one here. Okay. And basically what this is saying is that over a particular period of time, if we just, what I'll do is use this to have a look at a pop-up view so we're not all over the place with it. So we're basically saying that between these dates, if the range is 3.6, then we want to adjust it by 0.1%. So then by running this will do that automatically. If we look then at, rather than this one, let's have a look at the next one is the levy calculation. So what we're saying now for the levy calculation, if we just close that off, we're saying again, if we look at the pop-up view to make it easier, we're saying that again between these dates from here to here, so there's a large range in this particular case, we want the levy that needs to be calculated is going to be 0.25. So that when we start to look at calculating levies and capturing that information, this is the value that it's going to be working on. So these tables are, like I've said earlier, all set up in the background of the system. The third one we'll have a look at is just yield. And so this example is of yield value. So in nuts, there are various methods to set up prices per grade and sometimes prices per grade per variety. So this example is showing a price per variety per yield. So once again into pop-up view. So that's what this example is showing. Another option might be to enter the price for the best yield for the best grade on the purchase order or the contract and use bonuses or penalties to adjust the price. That's the sort of decision that gets made when you actually start to look at an implementation of the system. And again, your processes get taken into account and the system is configured to suit yourselves. So farms and or plantations can be created within the system. So a farm's just a grouping of plantations. And these can be set up even though you might not run farms or plantations yourself. This is really handy. So, you know, if you don't have a farming operation, it makes it possible still to keep track of the harvest forecast and actual harvest per plantation. So that they would be your growers' plantations. So the identification information for this includes the site, the season, business partners that are involved in the farm if the plantation actually belongs to a farm, the size of it, varieties planted, and any information for capturing costs and everything. So let's just have a look at a farm or a plantation in this particular case. Okay. So what we're looking at here is, again, you've got your site, which is your main company site, looking at seasons, the unit. So identification, this is where you've got who owns it, dates and information added to this particular screen. You've got your sowing, planting data, surface, here you've then, if we start to move along, so this is also the different type, so the tenure type, it's an owner, the irrigation system, plantation framework. So you've got a whole lot of extra information that you can capture for here, as well as you can have an image of, how the farm looks. Again, this is the area of the farm. So this is where you're putting in your forecast and your actual production figures. So you can put in your forecast, but the system will automatically update the actual production for this particular process. You've then got other fields, just characteristics, petitions that you can work with, and you can put your workers and, on here as well, if that's something that not really that relevant to you, but if certainly, capturing some of this information would be quite relevant. Now, as we looked at earlier, we had a look at some of the manufacturing process. We looked at the work order or a bill of materials and the routing and the work order itself. From a manufacturing perspective, there are two different ways you can work within the system. So you can actually do assembly, disassembly, or you can do full manufacturing, which is more what we looked at earlier, and I think is the process that we talked about, a while ago when we did the original presentations. So what I want to just cover off very quickly, a bill of material showing cracked bulk with byproducts. So very similar to the previous bond that we looked at, with the difference being that we're capturing the shell as a byproduct. So what we're going to do is just pop into here and have a look at bills of materials. We've got a production bill of material. Okay. And I want to just find a particular one. Let me just see what's going on here. Okay. Okay, I think this is the one I want. No, I want pecan nuts cracked bulk, this one. Okay, let's just have a look again. Just trying to find the product that I wanted, M201. Okay, look, what I did want to show was basically just, or let you know that you can actually just capture, actually what we'll do it from a different way. I'll see if I can find it. Okay. Let's just pop into the product itself. Okay. Okay. And the item I want is not sure I'm getting where I want to be. Anyway, let's just have a look if there's a manufacturing bill of materials attached to this. Okay, this is what I wanted to show you. So because this isn't my system, I'm going to make an excuse here. I'm just working through data that I'm not that familiar with. So what we're seeing here in this particular case is your bill of material. This is the components. So you've got your normal item, which is your pick and nut dried bulk. And then the byproduct of that is going to be the shells. So you're able to see that. And then you've got your routings and everything else attached to it. But so basically what this is saying that we're expecting, these sorts of figures. So the quantity for the bill of materials is 1.4, and we're getting 0.4 of shell back out of it as the byproduct, which we can use for other processes. An important process in manufacturing is the production scheduler. So this allows the planner to have a visual representation of how the process plant is tracking with regard to resource planning and with meeting the demand that you have. So this screen here shows a heat map of, so this is the production scheduler, and it shows a heat map of how your different resources are. So in this particular instance, we can see that this one's tracking at 100%. If the demand was over that, we'd have it in red. We can see this one's getting close, so these are sort of warnings. This one here is just no particular colour because at the moment it's tracking along really nicely. Another type of view of this might be your resource Gantt chart. We just pop in here. And this is now showing your different work orders that are in the system. So if you hover over it, we can see that it's a machine. We can see what quantity is left. There's a tag on that saying that it's for an important customer, so we can tag items. What we can also do if we highlight that is just open this up and just gives us a whole lot more information around this particular resource. So we can see what's overdue, we can see what's outstanding, we can see everything in relation to this particular work order rather than across the whole work centre itself. So when you're actually using the production scheduler, you can move things around. If you can see that you've got a bottleneck coming up, you might be able to move it to a different work centre. You can also, if you've got maintenance that you need to plan or you have a breakdown, you can build that into it. If you've got a real rush on and you need to add an extra shift in, you're able to add an extra shift into the system as well. So it's really flexible and gives you a really good graphical representation of how your production facility is running. So back into here. And we're going to have a look at purchasing. So first thing we're going to do is in enterprise management, you can use either a purchase order or a purchase contract. And I assume you would probably have some contracts with your different suppliers. If you do have a contract, it can provide a delivery schedule. So when you're expecting the nuts to be delivered to your management facility. So let's just have a look at a pre-entered purchase order that's already in the system, and we'll just pop into this process flow. Have a look at a purchase order. Right, so not that dissimilar really to the purchase orders that you would have seen in the enterprise management webinar. But the most important part of, we'll run through this quickly. So these are the lines that are coming in. So at totals, and the slight difference is that you can have a business partner attached to this particular one. More importantly with this, or the most important part of purchasing, is what we call the purchase intake, and that includes grading and quality, and that's what we're going to have a look at next. So when nuts are delivered at the management facility, several activities can take place. So a sample of nuts can be taken and quality assessments carried out. This is something that may happen at a different time based on your process. In this particular case, I've sort of got it at the start, but that might not be the case. The load gets weighed full, the nuts get offloaded, and then the load gets weighed again empty. These figures are put into the system, and the weight of that particular load of nuts is then calculated. So what we'll do is have a look at the purchase intake. Right. So the purchase intake is, you've got the site, you've got the vehicle that may be bringing it in. So you've got a table of vehicles that you can use within the system, be they carriers or your own vehicles, and you can put all the information of that vehicle in so that that's captured automatically. So what we've got here is the product. We've got the weight, so the original weight. So we've got the gross kilos. We've got once the kilos, once it's we've taken off the weight of the vehicle, and sorry, I'll start again. So you've got your starting weight, and then you've got your weight afterwards, and then you've got the calculation that takes into place the chair vehicle. So what we finished up with here is 4,750 net kilos. Transport details, which are on this tab here, can come from a file or they can be entered. And this is saying here that the transport amount that's going to be paid on this is $562.50. So what this also does as part of this process, when you've got all this information in, you then run a validation, and it will automatically calculate a receipt and a transfer document. You can also have in here as well, we look at the tabs, you can also have services, and an example of services that might be added as well are things like harvesting, as an example. When you're on the product itself, you remember I talked about the groups a little bit earlier. Sorry, I'll just find that. So when we're here, we can go to a document selection and a quality document. Okay, so this is a quality document that has then been attached based on those groups that I mentioned earlier. So when we looked at that table of information that had rules around the groups, this is where these groups come into play. So this is an example of a quality document. Down here, if we look at the nuts quality itself, so these are all the different types of ratings that are attached to this one here, so to these groups. Right. And when you've got, what happens when you get this information, you can put it in here. So in this particular case, we can see that the yield is 80%. So you put all of this information in. Based on that table of rules that we looked at earlier, the system calculates what value you need to be paying back to your supplier. Right. So, and when this is finished, it actually creates a purchase receipt. And like I said, it also, what it can do, it can also create the invoice for the delivery. So, you know, your delivery might be coming from somebody different. So the system's capable of calculating what you need for your supplier and what you need to pay to your delivery, for your delivery. So the next step after this is to create a price table of information, and that's going to take this information that's in here and is going to be used for creating the actual invoice. So what the system will do is, depending on who it has to create invoices for, it creates a recipient-created tax invoice. So once you've actually created that, you've got your settlement calculation. So what we'll do is we'll pop into that and have a look at. Let me just save that. Validate, pop out of here. Okay, so still in this purchasing screen, you've got this settlement calculation. So, and these are just the rules that it's going to, when it creates your particular, those invoices, it's just going to obey the settlement calculation rules that are in here. And then the final part of that is actually to create the purchase invoice. And if we have a look at a purchase invoice, it's just pretty much the standard Sage Enterprise Management purchase invoice. It's got the management, it's got lines, we'll close this off, the lines of the product, costs and the control accounts and everything that are attached to it. So that particular invoice is an example of the recipient created tax invoice that is created. Okay, so the last thing I was just going to have a quick look at is the sales process. We've been through the manufacturing. If we have a look at the actual sales process itself, you can do quotes within the system. One of the nice things with quotes is that you can set your quote up as a template so that you can use that same template over and over. We've got if we have a look at an actual sales order, just as an example of a sales order. This is just one that's in here, who was sold to. The management is just the tax rules and the sales rep, so forth. Delivery is going to be the shipment site that it's going to. You've got your lines. So in this particular case, these are the lines that were sold. I think more importantly for you guys is that because it's basically bulk nuts that we're talking about, you can actually use the sales weighing function. So what that is just the reverse of the nuts intake process, you know, so that you reverse that process and create your, you know, your sales invoices from there. So look, that finishes my webinar. I'm sorry, it was a little bit all over the place, but I hope it's given you an idea of how the system, you know, can work for you. And please feel free to get in touch if you've got questions, and we can certainly address them. Thank you very much.